Hey guys, welcome. What is up? I am Haberdashing here. This is the Four Wards podcast. Thanks everyone for joining us this week. It is March 17th here on St. Patty's Day. Woo! I'm wearing green. I should get
kind of green.
Drinking Irish whiskey.
Now everything's green, and yeah.
Bleh.
So
Yeah,
we could
looks
just say
pretty bad there.
everything's green because a large part of our audience is just purely listening.
Right. Yeah, we're all wearing
Everything.
green right now.
I painted my eyeballs green.
Wow. Okay.
It burns, guys. What do I do? What do?
Keep drinking till you don't feel anything.
Got it.
Hey.
On it.
Join the rest of America on this glorious celebration.
Freedom.
So, quick shout out for news stuff, guys. March 26th is our T-Force fundraiser. We got lots of tournaments and fun stuff going to be streamed here this Saturday, next Saturday. Or, I don't know, it depends when you're listening to this. The 26th, at any rate. PAX East still going on. You can join us there if you got tickets. If not, too bad. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff within the community. We're going to be doing lots of panels for both League and for other games. So that should be fun. If you're wanting to support us and get more people and more stuff to promote the Trinity Force Network at PAX, you can support us at Patreon, our Patreon page. All of our listeners supporting $10 or more will get access to a special Champion of the Month podcast there, as well as a lot of other great stuff for our contributors. Thanks to everyone who's supporting us so far, and everyone else, please check it out.
We didn't introduce ourselves this week, did we?
No, we just kind of jumped right into it.
Yeah. Sorry. Totally forgot. We are down one man this week here. I guess I wanted to kind of push past that part, but I'm still joined by Aaron Dune Spikinator and Steve Frostbite.
Yo.
So now that
And
everyone's
you're?
here and everyone's, I said that I introduced myself. I am a narcissist.
Oh, well, fair enough.
Habit just
Yeah,
wants
that
to
is
highlight
true.
himself and
Right.
then move.
And
Yeah.
then F you guys. All right. I see how it is.
Yeah, so now that everyone's here, we're all together, we can start off with our trinket tip of the week, which is going to be talking about ward placement. There's no specific thing to talk about, but there's a lot of little, did you knows or things about warding.
Yeah, we're kind of talking about wording before the show here, and one thing that a lot of people do wrong is word placement specifically. They either place their words in very obvious spots where it's going to get spotted out and swept easily, or they place it at a time when an enemy is nearby and knows that they placed it there, so they know to play around it, or it gets placed in an area where it's not providing as effective of vision as it really could be. Some of the examples are like with Baron. A lot of people just drop a ward right in the Baron pit, or in the little bush kind of outside of Baron, or like right in front of the Baron pit, which is fine and dandy and all, but a lot of times when people start sweeping or drop a pink in the Baron pit, they're going to catch that stuff out instantly. One cool spot you can do is just outside the Baron pit to the left, so like more towards top lane, right against the wall, there's like you'll see a little kind of curve in the wall in the animation. And if you place it right there against that wall, if they drop a pink in the Baron pit, it won't get spotted. If they're sweeping right out front of the Baron pit, it won't get spotted. And if they sweep that bush in the river, it's not going to get spotted at all.
That's a huge thing, really, just in general, is that so
Yeah.
many times people will try and get vision of an area before an objective spawns, and if you think about the enemy support comes over, he pops his sweeper. He's got a limited amount of time to try and clear as much vision as possible. The worst thing it's really problematic if you just put all your wards like just kind of close to each other to the point where they're really easily removable.
Right.
Like, you really want to kind of get control of vision in the area and make it both provide useful information, but also make it kind of did I lose you guys?
No, there we go.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We're all good.
I think we had a brief technical moment, whatever, for a second. The other thing I find interesting is that sometimes in bot lane, when people go to ward the lane brushes, they don't think about where they're actually placing that ward. And, you know, for instance, if you're going to place a pink ward in the lane brush to try and create opportunities for your jungler, it's better to keep it on your side of the lane brush, so that way the enemy can't just like move up and clear the ward. They actually have to like overextend in order to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we could keep going on and on with these sort of things, and maybe we will do a whole episode about ward placement here in the future. I don't know. I think people overuse bushes for warding in a lot, especially in the jungle.
Absolutely.
Like, take blue buff, for example. A lot of times when people want to do a deep ward, the first place they'll go is right towards that bush right in blue buff. But if you keep going a little bit farther in, right in that sort of area between all the buffs where everything comes together, that little junction, that isn't like swept nearly as often as any of the bushes are for wards. So, and it gives you vision like to where the jungler is pathing.
Yeah, like if you want to get a good, also for like bot lane, a good warding spot is if you do just up the ramp to their blue buff, to the, what would it be, the red side blue buff, in front of the dragon pit. If you put it just up that ramp leading to the blue buff, it's a nice spot because it gives you vision of the river, towards the blue buff and down towards the bush. So by having it there, you end up getting a better idea of where the enemy jungler could be, and you're just getting more vision real estate for that single ward. So, you know, definitely just kind of think of alternative places to place your wards. Obviously, don't place them when you're right in vision of an enemy, because they just know the vision is, they'll know the ward is there and they're gonna get rid of it, unless you're trying to bait, obviously. And start looking for more unique spots, because you'd be surprised how moving a ward just a little bit can make it that much harder for them to sweep it out or give you that much more vision.
Yeah, bringing it back to Baron here, when you first brought out the Baron warding stuff, I thought you were talking about the other one that I really like, which is directly behind Baron when he spawns. Like, since Baron is such a huge creature, when he does spawn, you can place a ward directly behind him in his line that extends, you know, all the way through the Baron pit, so that most people, when they try to clear it, they'll just attack Baron instead of using attack champions only.
Yeah, and
to clear it out.
They tried to make that more difficult by like making it so that way, you know, the Baron will like the dragon will knock away wards, but there's still like little sweet spots where you can make it like just a tiny bit more difficult to clear, and you know, you can potentially, you know, piss someone off if they accidentally aggro Baron.
Yeah, so let's move on here to some item discussion this week. We are talking about Thornmail.
Hell yeah.
Thornmail! If you're a Rammus player, then this is your favorite item.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's so strong on a lot of people, though. I think a lot of people overlook this item. You know, obviously there are some other strong armor items out there, like Dead Man's Plate, Randuin's Omen, etc. But this is such a strong item. It gives you more armor than any other item, and it reflects 15% of the physical damage taken, plus 25% of your bonus armor damage from basic attacks and on-hit effects back to its source as magic damage. and it's calculated before any resistances or reductions are taken into account.
Right.
So it against teams that have strong auto attack champions, whether it be like a Fed ADC or maybe like a Fiora or a Jax or a Tryndamere or something, this can just be a godsend because they'll just kill themselves on you.
And just to point out some other things about the item, it's 100 armor. It's builds out of cloth armor and chain vest, so the ingredients are relatively easy to come by. And as Doom said, you're taking physical damage from someone, and then you're sending it back at them in the form of magic damage passively. But what this item is really special about is like, when you think about team compositions and people are like, oh, we're all AD, we're all AP, like, this is the item that people think of when it's like, oh, the enemy team didn't take any magic damage. It's time for a Thornmail.
Well, even then, like, if there's like two big AD threats on the team, I think it's still a pretty good pickup. Like, the Thornmail in it of itself will deal 25 magic damage on hit to anyone attacking him with a basic attack. That's just from like the bonus armor from Thornmail. That's not counting any of the physical damage taken from that auto attack.
True.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people overlook, like, lifesteal is not as prevalent as it used to be in the meta. So a lot of like AD carries will actually end up doing a tremendous amount of damage to themselves if they're going up against a target that builds this item and they don't have like any lifesteal or magic resist. Rammus is like really the embodiment of what this item is all about, because if you've ever seen a Kog'Maw try and fight a Rammus, it's one of the funniest duels you could ever watch in the game, because he basically is committing suicide with crazy attack speed.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It also reflects any on-hit effects that are also physical damage, so like Blade of the Ruined King as well. So, like, even if you are really tanky, you're still dealing shit tons of damage back to people like Vayne, Kog'Maw, especially Kog'Maw. Holy shit. I love it.
Someone pointed this out in the chat, and I think it is worth calling out because we have new players that listen to our show. It does recommend in the tutorial to build this on Ashe.
Didn't they change that? I swear they must have changed that, but I still remember. Yeah, it's the only item that you can buy in the tutorial.
Don't
when you're
do
playing
that.
Ashe.
Don't build it on an AD carry.
Yeah, no, this is for tanky champions who plan on taking a beating. They want to be standing right in the front line saying, hey, hit me, hit me. So, yeah, no, don't put it on ADCs. Though a good defensive item, it is not a
it's not like a secondary defensive item. If you're building this item, you need to be the one that's full tank. Yeah. It's not like Sterix Gauge or something like that, where it offers enough defensive capabilities without gimping yourself in the damage department. With this, you need to be going full tank pretty much.
Yeah, and something to keep in mind with this item is that this item does not give you any health. It's only armor, which is why it's so prevalent against heavy AD teams or like all AD teams, because then you pretty much can focus your itemization against mitigating their damage. Whereas if you build this item and then all of a sudden the enemy AP carry gets fed, you're gonna have a tough time dealing with their damage output.
Right, but I mean, like, even if you have, I think, like Graves Jungle or a Quintop plus the AD carry, that's enough reason if you're playing a tanky top laner to build Thornmail as probably a second or third item. Yeah, it's a really good item. It's gotten a lot more prevalent, I think, in the meta, and since it's gotten that little bit of boost back in... Never mind, that was 5.16 that it was changed to add the bonus armor to it. So yeah, let's talk a little bit now about tower diving, which is our
Tower
main stuff.
diving.
Yeah.
Diving the towers.
So this was actually brought up. So we got some good feedback on the subreddit from an episode way back when, before we did our art of episodes talking about. We mentioned tower diving on the show, and they wanted to learn more about it. I was like, we'd love to talk about it, but we can't. It's a really complex topic that pretty much is going to require almost like a whole episode to really do it any justice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And now we're here, so I think probably the best place to start is really, what does a tower dive mean in League of Legends, and why do people do it?
Well, it's really just a way to push an advantage and to really leverage your strengths, punish poor positioning or poor placement by the enemy, and really snowball and take advantage of a situation.
Yeah.
It's a great way to put your enemies on tilt as well. You're basically saying that, hey, here's this thing that you're trying to hide behind. I don't care how much damage it puts out. I don't give a crap about it. I can still kill you, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you're in range of me, you're dead. So it's a great tool for it's a great technique for taking over lane, just snowballing the advantage and using your strengths against the enemy, especially when they sit there and are like, oh, you know what, if I stay at tower, I can soak up this XP, or I can get this last couple CS and stuff. Yeah, maybe at a third health, but I mean, I'm okay.
Yeah,
and
just for like a very basic definition here.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Sorry.
just so everyone is on the same page here. Tower diving is either you and other people on your team attacking a person, an enemy underneath their own tower.
Yeah, and the name is very straightforward. Like Haber mentioned, it implies what the action is.
Right.
And oftentimes, because the way a tower works, each tower shot does additional damage, and early on it does a pretty insane amount of damage.
Yeah.
So you really kind of want to get in there, finish the kill and then get out usually.
Yes.
So that's why it's often called a dive. You're not usually lingering under turret aggro for too long, at least not in the early game. So when I know that Doom talked a little bit about why people do it, but just to kind of expand on that, it's like the epitome of the high risk, high reward play.
Absolutely.
So we had a lot of folks on this show, like High, who talked about learning your limits and really pushing those to be effective in League. This is one of those cases where a really skilled player is going to recognize opportunities to go for this type of play, and they can calculate in their head whether or not it's the right decision to go for a dive, and that's going to be these little things that help to push them over the edge. And where other players might have a small advantage, they get a bigger and bigger and bigger advantage. So now that we've kind of talked a little bit about it, how does tower diving work? So what do I need to do in order to be effective at tower diving?
Well, it requires more than two people, or more than one person. You need at least two people, usually. Either that or you're super fed and tanky and you can just do it. But
it takes two people in the literal definition because you're diving somebody.
Yes. Sure,
Yeah.
I guess. Basically, it takes someone has to have the ability to tank at least 2, maybe 3 tower shots. You have to be able to burst someone down quickly enough to where, when you go in, they're gonna die. You have to be able to not get locked down under tower so that they can punish you for it, and it needs to be very quick and decisive.
It's a very all-in move. And so being decisive, being quick about it, and just recognizing when somebody makes a mistake and capitalizing on it, that's all key to being successful at diving. The other thing I wanted to bring out on top of that is that if you want to turret dive effectively, we said before it could be multiple people and switching tanks, and we're going to get into those details, but it's oftentimes equated to like someone all-inning someone under their tower. That's often considered a tower dive as well. So I'd say beyond just being quick and being decisive, I think a real big part about being successful at diving is knowing what the enemy champion is capable of. So what are some things that go into your mind, before a tower dive about, whether or not you're going to be able to dive a certain champion successfully?
The first thing you need to think about for any matchup, any champion, is going to be abilities, including summoners. If you're diving someone in the bot lane, do they still have flash and or heal up? If you're diving someone in the top lane, do they still have flash and or ignite up to really turn the tables on you? Along with any abilities that could either lock you up under tower or help them get away. Or even, things that help prolong the fight underneath the tower. If you're trying to dive a Kayle or a Nasus, Renekton, anyone like that, tower diving against them is not generally something that's recommended. I think that's like the first thing you really have to think through.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. It's knowing what the enemy champion's capable of, and not just their basic abilities, but also their summoner spells. So we've said this before, and we'll stress this again. If you keep track of major cooldowns, like someone's flash, it helps you to make these smarter decisions. Or if they have their ultimate up. Diving a Malzahar, for instance, that doesn't have his ultimate up is like 100 times easier than diving him when he has it.
No, it's night and day.
So one other thing, beyond just those, we mentioned things like Renektons and Nasuses getting a ton of health, and we talked about people like Kayle and Tryndamere having invulnerability. There's some other things to look out for that can also really screw you over when trying to tower dive someone. One thing that comes to mind with the Malzahar example, if they have like godly CC and are just like clearly the second you go in you're gonna get locked down, every turret shot's gonna hurt a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
I know Doom, like you're playing someone like Wukong, and then like you're under your tower, and then the enemy's like half health, you're low health, they try and go in on you. Like, what's it like? What are you gonna do in that situation?
If I have my ult up, you better believe I'm gonna hit my ult so I can pop them up in the air, so they're under tower taking damage not only from me but also the tower, with no ability to do anything about it, with no ability to be putting damage on me, or doing something. They're disabled for a while when they're knocked up. If I don't have my ult, I'm going to use my clone. I'm going to try to juke out damage. So I'm going to, stand still, see if they hesitate, see if they keep trying to put damage on me. If they're just going all in, I'll hit my decoy and hope that they put the rest of all their damage into the decoy, and I survive long enough to just walk to the other side of the tower and avoid the damage. I'm going to dance around tower for sure. I'm going to hug the tower as close as I can, try to get on the opposite side of the tower as them while still staying in tower range, and make sure that they're not going to be able to, that if they are going to kill me, that they're not getting away with their lives.
Yeah, those are all really good points. And what I like about what Doom said is that, there's multiple ways in Wukong's kit, for example, where you can try and outplay your opponent and make it their life difficult by making it yourself harder to hit, knocking someone up, ensuring that they're going to get hit by multiple tower shots. Like, all these things come into play, and it's your job as the diver to be aware of them before the actual action happens if you want to be successful.
Right.
Yeah, you have to take everything into account before you're going to dive. Do they, as we said, do they have summoners? Do they have their ult? Do they have their lockdown abilities up? You try to tower dive. There's just some champs you just don't tower dive. Like, it's almost silly to try to tower dive them, because unless they just use, their big cooldowns, it's almost guaranteed that you're not going to be able to do it.
At least diving by yourself.
Exactly.
Or,
yeah.
I
mean, depending on champ, look at like a Morgana.
Yeah, let's for now think about the one-person dive, and I think we'll expand to the multi-person dives.
Sounds good.
But to Doom's point, I think, Malzahar, I go back to that example, a suppression by a Malzahar ult lasts so long, and you cannot get out of it without QSS. So if that is hitting you and you're under a tower, especially if you hit the other parts of his combo, like, even if you're relatively tanky, you're probably going to get killed trying to dive him. But the other thing I wanted to mention that we it kind of goes in line with the Kayle example is that some champions just can straight up go untargetable. And there's nothing more frustrating than when you try and flash kill somebody under their tower, and then Fizz uses Playful Trickster, or Vlad uses his pool, and then you look like an idiot.
Yeah. You really just need to think about that sort of stuff before you dive. And, keep in mind how much damage you can really output in a given amount of time. In any tower dive scenario, you really want to be getting out of there as quickly as possible, just because of how the damage mechanics work with the tower, which we can get into a little bit later on here if you guys want.
Now, yeah, I think before we get into the group dives and some of those damage mechanics, let's flip the script and talk about what champions are actually really good at diving, and why are they good at diving? Like, what types of things do good tower divers have? What makes a good tower diving champion?
So if you're looking at like a solo tower diver, I think like one of the best ones I would say would be a Renekton. Renekton has a great way to get in or out with his slice and dice. He has a stun, so he can lock the person up, as soon as he gets in under tower. He has the auto attack reset with his stun plus the damage from his Q, so he can reset and deal out a lot of damage quick. And then he has his ult, which gives him the bonus health and the AoE damage, so it helps with not only with his damage output, but it helps him tank that extra tower shot or two when he goes in. He's a very solid, solo tower diver. And he's a very good bully in lane. So, his whole MO is he's going to bully you out in lane. He's going to win trades. And then when you're low and he hits 6 and you're dumb enough to stay under that tower at a third health, he's just going to go in, burst you down, and get out. So he doesn't care if he eats 2 or 3 tower shots. You're dead. So, and then he's got sustain from his Q to be able to get some of that health back and just keep going to town. So.
Yeah, I think in general, the really good tower divers either have ways to negate tower damage, easy ways to get in or out, which may also include range, and abilities to deal large amounts of burst damage.
We did actually a trinket tip on this a few weeks back, but some champions have executes where they can do a lot of damage to low health targets. If you think of someone like Lee Sin, and where he hits his Q, and the common meme of him like following his Q no matter what.
Lee Syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. One of the reasons why they do stuff like that is that if you do that to somebody and they're under their tower and they're low on health, even if they're a relatively, strong target, that extra damage from the execute is going to be super strong in a dive, and he's got a gap closer, so like if he hits that, you're probably going to die.
Yeah,
yeah.
Another good example everyone brings up for tower diving, and since we're on the topic of executes, would be Elise.
Yeah, I
Oh
think
yeah,
she's like the goddess of tower diving in my
Right.
opinion.
she really is.
I made a list of like a bunch of different things that good tower divers have, and like one of the thing we talked about this before, gap closers, executes. She's got that. She's got that. But
Lockdown.
one other thing that she's got that's super good, which some champions have, is she has a way to just completely
Drop aggro.
drop turret aggro,
Right.
and that's through the use of her repel. If she executes someone with her bite, and then she needs to get out of turret aggro, she just pops her E, and then voila, the turret stops attacking her.
Which is like, I think we should explain that a little bit. Like, dropping aggro is a little bit different than someone like just dashing out of turret range. Because when you're, like, say, a Renekton or Lee Sin or someone like that that's just dashing out of range, the tower will still track you as you're leaving the range. Versus, so it can get like an extra shot off of you. Versus Elise, where as soon as you hit that repel, the tower completely stops trying to track you. So you can jump from being right next to the tower to being outside of it, and the tower's not going to track you during that time you're in your repel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Plus the other thing I like about Elise is it allows you can either A, hit the E to just jump up in the air, drop the aggro, let a minion start taking it and then drop back down, or B, say you might be past the your minion line and they're not in range of getting hit by the turret. You may be in range of their minion line, so you can just drop back to one of their minions and get out of the range quickly. So she can not only drop the aggro, but she can also open that gap back up and get out.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think we could keep going with so many different examples because a lot of champions excel at it. But just as a review of some of the things we talked about, gap closers in CC are really nice. Being able to block or dodge turret shots either through untargetability or like shields, like a Pantheon block, and also just having high burst damage or executes, all super useful. And of course, tankiness when trying to dive someone under their tower. So let's talk a little bit about the more complex, or in some ways easier, but also more complex versions of trying to dive a tower with multiple people. So going into a tower dive, let's say a very common example is that we'll have let's have a solo lane, and then a jungler comes to gank your lane, and the enemy is low health. What are some techniques to be successful going in? How does it sort of break down in terms of who does what once it's time for the dive?
Well, you have to have your person who's gonna tank the damage from the tower. Whether it be 1-2 shots, whatever. You're gonna juggle aggro. You have to have the person who's able to lock them down and spit out that damage real quick. And that's really about it. I mean, that's the main things you need is the damage and the face tank.
Yeah, I think that's really a big thing that people often forget about, is that when somebody's low health, it's not just about getting in there and killing them. It's about, this tower is going to start attacking one of us. Who is it more optimal for it to attack, and how do we best set up a situation where we manage this tower damage and dive someone successfully?
Mm-hmm.
So, thinking about that, what are some techniques? Let's say you're the jungler here, and I guess I'll lean on Doom for this one. What are some things that you want to do before diving someone to make sure that it's successful?
I want to check cooldowns. I want to make sure that I know if the enemy has flash, or if they have barrier, heal, or exhaust, or something like that. I want to make sure that they don't have a way that's going to screw us over, that's going to allow them to like get a double kill with the 8 of the tower. I want to ensure that me and my diving partner both have all the cooldowns up that we need. I also want to ensure that I have vision on key people. I want to make sure that I know where the jungler is, or at least roundabout where he is, so I know that he's not going to counter gank and turn it in.
Yeah, that's
turn
huge.
it around.
I think a lot of times people don't keep in mind that, and especially the higher you go up, counter ganking is a real dangerous threat. And the last thing you want is to commit to a tower dive only to have it backfire miserably. And that's what a counter gank can do if you don't know where the enemy jungler is. Also, to build on that, I know I'm kind of become the champion of smart pings at this point.
True.
But if you're playing the jungle role, or really anyone in general, and you're trying to dive someone, pinging both to ping on the target that you want to dive them or to ping that you're on your way to set up a dive are incredibly useful information. So that way you don't like go in and be like, yo, why'd you leave? Why'd you bail? What the hell?
Yeah.
Because YOLO.
That's like the opposite of YOLO. That's like, yo, I'm going to go home and buy some items.
No, it's really important. Do you guys want to talk about managing aggro here for a minute?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. So managing aggro is basically saying, all right, I need to take the shots, or you need to take the shots, or maybe we need to split it up here. But when do I walk out of the range of the tower? Or when do you? So say that hey, I know I can definitely tank 2 shots, 3 may be a bit overkill. So what you want to do there, where you may be splitting up shots, is being able to say, all right, I'm going to go in, I'm going to tank those 2 shots. As that second one, though, is on its way into me, I need to be starting to head out of the range of the tower so a third one doesn't fire off. And your partner needs to know that, all right, I know that I'm going to tank a shot right after he takes his second. Another one's going to be heading my way, so I need to be ready to tank that shot. Am I going to be able to tank more than 1 shot, and am I going to have the damage and everything needed to kill this person and be out of the range of the tower before that second or maybe that third one starts coming in?
Yeah. Like when you're deciding who's going to be tanking aggro, I think the first thing that comes to mind, for me at least, is if one of the people diving has range, they're the ones that need to start the dive. Just because the tower has 775 range. If you have someone that has that 400 range, they don't need to walk nearly as close. They can get in and out very quickly. So it's easier for them to start it out. It allows the other person to get into tower range and get all their damage out. And so they don't need to take all the damage when they're first just going in.
Yeah.
So if you're someone,
that's so huge. Like a lot of inexperienced divers will take unnecessary damage going into the dive, whereas the turret, you can, in a lot of cases, you can avoid getting hit by the tower until you actually lay your hands on the enemy champion, and that should be avoided whenever possible. Like you should always try and reduce the number of shots you'll receive during the dive.
Yeah.
And to go off of that, well, actually, before I transition to there, I think, Haber just mentioned range. I think one of the most basic things you look for is that the tank is generally more suited to taking tower shots. So if you're going to say who goes in first, a lot of times, the tank's going to have to go in so that way your squishy champion doesn't die during the dive.
Right, like if you're setting this up later in the game. If it's still laning phase, prior to maybe, I'll say 15 minutes before a tank can really complete a good item, then it's really hard to say have the tank take care of it, because they're no really tankier than anyone else, like the jungler.
So the thing I wanted to expand into is, and it builds off of that excellent point you mentioned, which was, avoiding taking shots before you need to. One technique you'll see a lot, especially in high-level LCS games, is people proxying minion waves behind the tower. Now, why do people do this? Why would somebody, go behind the tower and then start, killing the minions if they wanted to tower dive someone?
Because
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's gonna ensure that the enemy minion wave isn't going to get in and start clearing out your minion wave as fast, and that you're gonna have a bigger minion wave build up on there that's gonna be able to keep tanking shots up until the point that you're there. Also, to make sure that when you dive in, that you don't start taking minion damage as well as tower damage.
Yeah, those are both huge. And I'm trying to give a visual here. So if you can imagine bot lane, you're on the blue side, you're trying to dive the red side under their tower. If you are the jungler, if the enemy bot lane is really low health, you might go behind their tower, start, dealing with that minion wave while your bot lane pushes up. So that way you've got this giant wave of minions that are going to hit this tower. They're going to have no minions to prevent and by having no minions, that means the tower will start shooting at the minions as opposed to your champions. And then you've got a numbers advantage and you just collapse on them. And if done properly, it's really hard for the enemy bot lane to respond to.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it in the LCS all the time. They love multi-person coordinated dives, and it does require a bit of coordination, but when you do it properly, it takes a small advantage and creates a much, much larger one. So before we get into sort of analysis of, and why that's important, do you guys have any other general tips about early to mid game tower diving?
Well, not exactly a tip, but just be aware, especially early on, that towers really do hurt. Even when you're diving with two people, that person who's going to be taking that second tower shot, or who's going to be taking aggro second, may not realize that the entire damage doesn't reset when the first person drops aggro. The turret will still retain up to 75% bonus damage, depending on how many times it struck a champion before that. So, yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff that goes into determining how much damage a turret's really doing to you. But yeah,
I said this before on an older episode, but when I first started playing League, I had no idea how tower aggro worked. So
right.
I just assumed you shove the lane and then you go and you attack the people under their tower, and I just never understood why it would attack me as opposed to the minions, and it led to a lot of fails. So Haber brings up a lot of points about how devastating the damage can be, but one thing we haven't quite mentioned yet is that it kind of changes over the course of the game.
Right.
Late game, a Scion that has a lot of armor really isn't going to be too intimidated by taking a handful of tower shots from an outer turret. It almost becomes... Right. It gets to the point where basic turrets are really not going to be too much of a threat to a tanky champion.
The outer turrets, they start at 152 AD. They cap out at 180 AD. That's it. That's all. That's as bad as they hurt. Versus,
Yeah.
I mean, a late game Scion or Rammus or someone like that has tons of armor and health. Even at that point, the inhibitor towers max out at 290. So, which it's a good amount, but still.
And you can use this fact to your advantage because a lot of lower level players will think that the towers are still like a safeguard
Yeah.
in a longer game. That's not really the case for at least the outer turrets, once we're
No.
talking like the 40-minute mark.
Yeah, because once you have, if you're a tankier champ, and once you have 150 armor, 200 armor on you, you don't really give a shit about towers, honestly. Or if you're like an Alistar with Unbreakable Will, you don't give a damn. I'm just gonna set my chair here and sit down, read the paper.
Yeah.
All right, you guys got them. All right, cool.
Yeah, damage reduction still applies to towers. I think in most cases. Is it every case? I don't know. I'm guessing it is, but I'm not totally sure.
So the other thing to think about here is, we talked about the outer turrets. What makes these, I guess, Nexus turrets and inhibitor turrets different from standard turrets, and how does that kind of change the way it works late game?
So what do you mean, like the lightning thing?
Yeah, the laser.
Okay, yeah, the laser. So the the inhibitor and Nexus towers are a little bit different, obviously, because instead of attacking their attack speed being 0.83, their attack speed is actually 4.0. So as soon as you come into that range, you are blasted with lasers. It applies a lot more damage, a lot quicker, and it follows you and it keeps applying damage that entire way while you're going in and out of the turret. So it can ramp up damage a lot quicker.
If anyone's played StarCraft, it's a little bit like a Void Ray. It's just like shining a laser on you, and it just gets intense and more intense. And while if you're super tanky in the late game, you can still deal with it a little bit, but it's way more of a threat than a standard turret in the late game. To the point where you need to be, I've definitely won some fights late game where somebody misstepped and I gold carded them under an inhibitor tower, and like that was enough damage to turn around a fight.
Right.
Yeah. But in general, like late game, towers are very different from early to mid game. Most of this high risk, it's always somewhat high risk, high reward, but especially in the early game because just of how much damage you have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we could kind of wrap this up here and talk about probably the most important thing about tower dives. And really, we apply this to a lot in League. It's after you dive, whether successfully or especially unsuccessfully, what do you do after the dive? And this is more of from a mindset of improvement as opposed to, just in the game itself.
Well, I mean, either way, there's a lot to look at, whether it worked or whether it didn't work. Especially if you're involving like a third person as well. So this is where replays, I think, do come in handy, just to look at all the different things. Okay, did I see, look what summoners were up, what spells were up, how many shots did I take? Did I take unnecessary shots getting to the person? Was there a quicker way in or out? Did I analyze exactly how much damage I could have done? Did I overestimate that damage? How did I manage my aggro with my partner when I was diving? Could I have tanked one more shot for them, perhaps? There's a lot of stuff that goes into this because you're monitoring the tower essentially as a whole other person in that encounter.
Yeah, that is tremendous. Like, Haber just named a whole bunch of things, and you could honestly name a whole lot more depending on the champions, there's so many variables that go into this. So we can't give you a one-size-fits-all answer of, whether or not a dive's going to be successful. You need to be able to look at the play, look at whether or not it was successful, and then say, what could I have done differently should I have avoided this spell? Maybe I made the wrong call because they still had their ultimate, they still had flash, and like knowing how to prepare for that, is the difference between somebody who, improves at their game and learns their limits versus somebody who, just does something and hope it works.
Yeah, I think that Hai really did a good job of explaining this. Is that you don't really know your limits until you test them. So, the more you get out there and you test those limits and you try them, the more comfortable you'll feel. I know personally there's, it depends on the champ I'm playing with, but like if I'm playing Wukong or like Rek'Sai or Trundle, I know when I can tower dive. I know when it's a good time that I can go in and start tanking that turret or get out the damage I need to finish off a kill or whatever. So, test your limits, know, who you're with and know that damage output. I think Frost has seen it a lot with me and Shoe Monster. His buddy Shoe Monster loves to play Sion jungle. I always say that. And Sion's a great diver. And just going in with him, like I know when we go in, all right, I know we can do this. So sometimes too, you want to look at, are you comfortable playing with the person and that, you guys got that communication to be able to do it. So, look at dives from all aspects, not just from a solo lane, but also from like a duo or who you're playing with. And sometimes there are situations where you may be feeling a little more risky and you want to take those risks more simply because that usually you're going to end up on the better side of it because you have that communication. So,
Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely keep in mind, there's a teamwork and communication aspect to it, and that's part of the reason why it's so common in the LCS and why you see these coordinated dives. I really like that point. But I think we kind of need to move into some listener questions here. We have a bunch left over from last week, and we're not going to be able to get through all the ones we have lined up even for this week, so I think we'll just dive into one of these here. We got one from Jake. Jake says, okay, so I'm currently Silver 2 and was Gold 1 last year. I'm pretty good at winning in farm and outplaying someone during team fights. My problem is in the laning phase when it's 1v1. I have a lot of pride outside of the game, so inside of the game, if someone engages on me or tries to fight me, I have a hard time backing down. Knowing a jungle is coming or I simply can't win the trade, I will still stay and fight because I don't want to be looked at as a bitch. So how do I fix this? P.S. I love your guys' podcasts.
Honestly, I think it's... I can get that attitude, but I think you're just kind of looking at it the wrong way. It's not so much looking at a matchup and saying, oh, I definitely have to punch that guy harder than he's going to punch me. Otherwise, I'm going to lose. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. I mean, there's just winning trades, taking, like the little things. Gosh. I'm trying
All right, so
here,
I'll put it this way. If Steve and I are sitting there and we're getting mad at each other and we're gonna come to blows or something like that, if it's just Steve and I'm like, all right, I might be able to take this fight. But if Steve has a pair of brass knuckles or he has Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson standing behind him, I know it's probably not a good idea to take that fight. I'm probably going to get my ass beat. It's about...
That's why I always bring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson every time I play League.
Every time I see him, that motherfucker just has Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson standing behind him. No. So really assess the situation and you have to say, you know what, this time I need to back down. But I'm going to take advantage as soon as I possibly can, because if you're getting that farm advantage and you're getting that gold advantage, it means that you're becoming a tangible threat. And if a jungler is coming to gank you, it usually means that either A, you are a threat, or B, you're making yourself less of a threat because of your positioning. So you want to always be looking at that, like, why, like, say you see the jungler coming. Why is the jungler coming? Well, it's probably because you're winning at farm. Or it's probably because you've pushed the lane up and you're overextended. That's probably why he's coming. So you need to start backing off.
Yeah,
you know, don't. It's all about the best circumstances. Don't take fights where the odds don't favor you, because you're probably going to lose every time. But if you take fights that have even or greater odds to where you're going to win it, that's when you take the fights, because that's when you show them up and say, hey, right, I won because I chose, not only was I strong enough to fight, but I chose the best time to fight you.
Yeah, it's really is a game of knowledge, not so much about force. And even at the end of the day, it's really not about winning the 1v1. It's about winning the game. If you can go out of lane without dying, that is almost just as good in matchups as leaving the lane, 5-2 or something like that. You don't always have to be the one that gets the more kills in your lane. Oh, well, I got 3 kills and you only got 2. Suck it, I won. It really doesn't fucking matter.
Haber was hitting on something before, and I'm circling back a little on it because I really like it, is getting a little advantage. If you think about when we had Quas on the show, he played top lane in the LCS. He played competitive League of Legends. And he talked all about small victories. And what he means is, you take little advantages and you work with them and you build on them. Instead of just, constantly bashing yourself, like, I'm going to be super aggressive, I'm going to dominate this person, I'm going to harass them when they go to farm, I'm constantly going to push my lane, I'm not going to, respond to the enemy jungler, I'm going to try and 2v1 them when they show up. Like, that's being reckless, that's not being smart. Like, you want to be that calculating player. You want to be the person that doesn't just go aggressive because you can, you go aggressive because it's the right time to be aggressive. You want to be that, like, John Wick hitman that, like, knows the right moment, knows when to take the shot, and then, like, just does it and then moves on instead of, like, constantly trying to, like, kill everyone in their path.
Because
they'll recognize that you're gonna get punished for it.
Yeah, when you're overzealous, you're just gonna get punished for it. That's one of the best times to punish people, and to, with bounties and the way the bounty system is in this game, they can easily swing a gold difference just by killing you once. So you have to recognize that, and you have to realize when, what, as strong as I am or as good as I'm doing, I can't win this fight. So I've got to back down now. I'll get you, but it's just not going to be right now.
Even if you're better at laning than your opponent, because sometimes you will be in these games, like, you'll be in top lane, you're like, wow, I just know I'm better than this opponent. I've been beating them in CS. I've been out trading them. You still need to respect the fact that the jungler exists. Like, they could be playing safe and they could be bad, but all it takes is that one mistake where you get overzealous and then bam, the jungler comes in and then you give gold away, and then you're throwing away that one advantage you had. Instead of having that small victory, you've now just torn it to pieces, and now you've got nothing. In fact, you might even be at a deficit. So really, it's about working with small victories and building on them, and not just going relentlessly aggressive. It's calculated aggression.
Yeah. I think we can move on to one more question here. You guys tell me. I really want to do this one from Ben Ramsey.
Yeah, let's do that.
Cool.
One.
Okay. So Ben Ramsey writes in and says, I am only level 20, and I heard that the level 20 to 30 grind is the hardest. However, due to the recent XP requirement changes, I climbed 2.5 ranks in under 12 games. I therefore have amended that goal and will try to reach 30. play my placements, and hopefully make it to silver before the season ends.
Real quick.
Strong.
We should probably point that out to people.
Right.
We maybe, the
Cut it in
level
half.
1 to 30 is like cut in half. Way
Yep.
easier to
Yeah.
get to 30 now.
So, in preparation for my expectations of quickly reaching 30 and playing ranked, my only question is, what exactly is Elo Hell? Does it have to do with not being able to get out of bronze? Is bronze some inescapable pit of mediocrity, or do people just not ward and take objectives?
Elo Hell is a mindset.
Yeah.
Elo Hell is the mindset that I'm better than all these people I'm playing against, but I'm stuck in here because of ABC that doesn't have to do with me. That mindset is toxic. Elo Hell, in my opinion, does not really exist.
Mhm.
And the only thing you can affect, and this goes in every aspect of life, but I mean, definitely in this game, the only thing that you can directly affect is yourself. So you have to play the best you can. And if you're stuck in a place rank wise that you don't like, then it's up to you to figure out what are you doing wrong, because you're obviously doing something wrong. It could be positioning, it could be CSing, it could be a billion different things, but you need to start making small goals. Watch playbacks like Plays TV. Most of us use it here. Get Plays TV, get that set up, start watching your replays, and really focus. But honestly, setting a goal for silver when you're like not even 30 yet, I applaud you on setting the goal, man. But
I don't know. I mean,
it's
It could be
absolutely
that,
doable,
you know,
but
you're-
it
you're-
really
we-
comes down to
yeah.
your MOBA experience, I think.
right. It's true. Like, if you're brand new to the genre and this is your first season into it, chances are after your placements you will end up in bronze. So, you know, like what Doom was saying before, bronze has nothing to do with Elo Hell. It exists everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It's never within any certain point. It's not bronze, silver, gold, challenger, whatever it is, because any single person in those elos can be playing to the best of their potential, learning how to get better and improving. But if you're not in that sort of mindset, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, and it's going to make it a lot harder to reach your goals.
Yeah, it's commonly associated with things like bronze and silver because they're the lower tiers, so there's more inexperienced players. But in reality, like, it's Elo Hell is a myth. Like, it's a myth that you can't climb out because you're constantly getting paired with bad teammates, and therefore whatever you do, it won't matter because your teammates are doing so bad. The consistent factor in all of your games is you. So maybe you're going to lose some games because you have a top laner disconnect, and you have some games that are just, they will pretty much be unwinnable. And that does happen in League. But it's a 5v5 game. You only control one player. But in general, if you play a large string of games, you will climb if you consistently outperform your opponents. And that is really where Elo Hell kind of falls apart. Like, if you put a high-ranked player on a low-level account, they'll quickly climb out because they'll be capitalizing on all these mistakes that they see their opponents making, and they'll be focusing on what they need to do to win the game instead of worrying so much about the time their bot lane fail flashed or like their rager in chat and all this stuff. Like, they'll just play the game to win, and they'll outperform their opponents, and that's how you climb in League of Legends.
Yeah. I think that's about it. I mean, I wish you luck here getting to 30, and I hope your placements go really well.
Yeah, best of luck on your goal, Ben Ramsey. I think you can do it. You just gotta stick to it and believe in yourself.
Yeah, kick some ass, man. You can do it.
All right. I think that'll be it for us here this week. We'll be back next week. Hopefully Michael will be here as well. This has been the Four Words Podcast. I am Haberdashing, and I am joined by Frostbite and Aaron Doom Spikenata.
Hi, I exist.
Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye. Later.